Okay, so we're going to do the thing. So, the same spiel that we do every week is we do not represent any of the A's, any of the anonymouses. We are not affiliated with any specific 12-step fellowship. We are just reading through the big book, and these are just our own opinions and experiences that we're sharing. And that's it. So, no, you're good. So we finished the doctor's opinion. Praise God. In a different group, we just started the doctor's opinion. I'm like, this is wild. So on page 1, it says, war fever ran high in the New England town to which we knew. Young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned, and we were flattered when the citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. There was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last. And in the midst of the excitement, I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and prejudices of my people concerning drink. In time we sailed for over there. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. I think what always stands out to me in this is the fact that in the excitement, I found liquor. In the loneliness, I found liquor. Good day, bad day. Taking a trip, not taking a trip, right? Like, whatever the case may be, that's always still present. And I also want to be clear that, like, as we start reading through this, we're going to see a lot of, like, Bill's ego and all of these different things that we like to relate to alcoholism. But that's kind of silly. You know what I mean? Because, like, everybody is susceptible to being super prideful and super egotistic and super narcissistic and super selfish. It's not just us. However, ours like kind of morphs and mutates into this weird fucking thing when you throw addiction and alcoholism into it, and it continues to fuel the mental obsession. Right? So, am I an alcoholic because I'm prideful and kind of a dick? No. However, it's the same thing with like correlation is not causation. You know what I mean? So, I was part of life at last. Like, that's what I felt like the first time I smoked weed with my friends. You know what I mean? Like, all this stuff, like, it'll go through, like, I had arrived and all this different shit. And that's literally what it felt like when I started getting loaded. Because I felt always on the outskirts of life. And, like, I just didn't belong. That's not everyone's experience, but you do hear a lot of us in the room say that, like, when they're telling their story and stuff like that. Everyone got the manual but me. We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier, who caught his death, drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is never forgot, whether he dieth by musket or by pot. Ominous warning, which I failed to heed. The question that's always been posed to me is, what is an ominous warning you got in the beginning of your drinking or using days that you failed to heed?
For me, it was like seeing my mom go through the struggles of alcoholism. And seeing her, drunk and mean and scary. And I still, I told myself I wouldn't end up that way, and then did the exact same thing.
Yeah. Fucking good answer, same. Honestly, yeah. I never think about that one, but that is the truest fucking one.
Yeah, generational shit.
Yeah.
But generational trauma.
Yikes. Anyone else?
Same thing with Harvard, right? Middle school. Like, I was acting the same way he was acting, even though I thought I wasn't quote unquote as bad as him.
Yeah.
And then I still continued to do exactly what he was doing, even though he was horrible.
Yeah.
To me.
Right. So, but I'm different.
Yeah, like that was, I literally walk around saying, I'm not like him.
I'm nothing like him.
Yeah.
Literally his mirror image.
That's I never even made that connection until now, until you were like talking about that. Because like my oldest brother, like he was very chaotic, very, like just chaos followed him, like it was like that kind of thing. And it was like there was always something. And like he was always like, I don't know, I didn't know him well enough to know whether he was like an addict or an alcoholic or anything. I assume from what I do know that he was.
Yeah.
But like I've always thought that like, me and him were like so much alike, and we were like the outsiders of the family, and like I've always been like, we're so much alike, and like, he did a lot of harm to me like when I was a child and everything too. And so like, I don't know, it's interesting hearing that from y'all and being like, I've always had that connection with him, thinking like we're so much alike and everything, and then like that's like another similarity there, that's
Right.
crazy. Sorry.
No, 100%. That's why we do it.
Yeah.
Right? We're trying to like smash the delusions and draw attention to the things that like we just didn't see and realize. For me, one of the really big things I always think about is the way that I like started this whole thing of life, if you will, was like I was super straight edge, right? Like if you smoked weed, I wouldn't talk to you. Like the most judgmental little like 13-year-old you're ever gonna meet. You're dirtbag, don't talk to me. Like gothed out as I'm like sitting in a dark corner, like cutting myself in an active eating disorder, you know what I mean? And it went from like, I won't talk to you if you smoke weed to, okay, well my friends smoke weed, but don't do it around me, to I want to see what all the fuss is about, right? And it was literally that way. And my, I say my best friend, also my first girlfriend, funny enough, like her and all of her other friends would like go to Smith Haven Mall on Long Island and they'd go to the woods and smoke weed, and I just walk around them all pissed. I'm not with my friends. I'm very angry. And finally I was like, I want to know what it is. I'm going to do it. You guys want to smoke weed? I'm going to smoke weed. And she looked at me and she was like, I need you to not. Like, please don't smoke weed. And to this day, neither of us really know why. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess she does more than I do. I don't fucking get it. But I was like, why? You do it. Why can't I do it? And she's like, there's just something about you. Yeah. Tell me what to do. I like smoked weed out of spite and it's like acted way more high than I actually was. Like, I'll never forget. She was so mad. 15, or 14. She's so mad at me. And I'm like, I smoked weed. Idiot, right? Who's the idiot now? This heroin addict.
I can totally relate to this. And I feel like what we're highlighting here is like, oh, how things always snowball. And it's like, I'm not as bad as that person. And if you only understood, well, I have to deal with these people, so I'm just doing this because I have this trauma and these things I have to deal with. If you would understand, you do.
Right.
And then it's like, but I'm not as bad. And there's like this victim mentality, but also like this halo effect where it's like we can't see our own delusions. And also it starts somewhere. It's like a feedback loop where it's like we pick up on what's going on around us, Trippy.
No, dude, 100%. And it's like correlation is not causation, right? Because like I always go into like why are you a meth head and you're an alcoholic and you're a pill head and I'm a heroin addict, right? Like what's up with that? And I think a lot of it is like a cultural difference. Like where did you grow up? What were your friends doing? Like, cause I know that if I was like, I grew up around meth heads, I'd be a meth head right now. That's just my truth. But like I grew up when the heroin epidemic started to rise in New York, right? Like no one did it. Right, and then out of nowhere, everyone did it, and it went from like this sensationalized like movie thing into an actual thing. Right, like I think about my group of friends, and I thought that we were all drug addicts and alcoholics. Really did, but now in retrospect, I think about it, and like yes, there was a core of us, and the real fucking deal, and a lot of those people are no longer with us. It's just the truth. But when I think about like that group of people sitting there smoking weed with me, who of them tried heroin? A bunch of them. Who of them continued to, given sufficient reason to stop? Not most of them. I did. Because I'm wired differently than they are. Right? And they're like, whoa, you're losing your shit. And I'm like, hey, you're not my mom. And even if you were, I don't respect my mom. So no one's going to tell me what to do. right? And just like chalk it up to like rebellion. But really it's like crippling drug addiction and alcoholism. I had no idea, right? And no one even knew what that was. I thought you stop smoking or you stop doing drugs, you're not a drug addict anymore, right? And that's just not how it works. Ominous warning I failed to heed. Continued to do that for the next fucking however many years. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader. Fucking Sam. So I'm more like Bill than I care to admit. It's just the truth. For had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation, my talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises which I would manage with the utmost assurance. Literally me working in treatment. Had they not? No. God. I took a night law course and at a Brooklyn law school and obtained employment as an investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I proved to the world I was important. God damn it. Why do I have that underlined? Work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk. That the most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived. I have that underlined, starred, and I wrote same. So
I used to think I like digested information better when I was drunk.
I drive better when I'm drunk.
My boyfriend at the time would get me like a bottle of wine every time we hung out because I would go over there to binge watch Game of Thrones and I would just drink the whole bottle of wine while watching it and be like, ooh, I'm so sophisticated and this is so cool. And then really I'm like fucking like slurring my words and shit. I don't remember the show at all. Had to rewatch it a couple of years later. I'm just like waking up with the wine stains on my mouth and just like it's grimy. And I thought it was so cool.
Super sophisticated.
Yeah.
100%.
I used to pride myself very much in my philosophical thoughts while I was using, right?
Yeah.
And it's because like nothing else is going right in my life, so it's like this is where we go, and I talk about all this stuff, but not apply any of it. Right? Like, I'm talking about all these philosophies, like Buddhism or whatever, and I'm just like this chaotic, like consuming, like seeking stimulation. Yeah. It just, and then I remember even in my heart knowing, like, you're just full of shit. Like, you talk about all this stuff and you don't do any of it. You know?
The alcoholic lives a double life to the world and presents a stage character. It says that in some book.
It's insane.
No, 100%. I fancy myself an artist, right? An artist of words, if you will, a wordsmith, one might say. And my poetry, my lyrics, goddamn, throw in some Xanax, fucking puff some weed smoke in there, put in some SoCo, shake it up, watch it go, right? Incredible sonnets. And here's the thing, is a lot of the shit that I wrote when I was fucked up was pretty good. A lot of it, though, I'd go back and be like, what? Like, that's how I got mumbled. Like, let's be real. I'm like, what is this? And I thought it was really good. And like I said, some of it was really good. I go back and I'm like, damn, that's fire. And one of my biggest fears in getting sober is I wouldn't be able to write anymore. I couldn't, like, make songs anymore. I was terrified. And I'll never forget when I was in treatment, like, the first time I got sober in treatment, like, saying that out loud. I'm like, but what if I'm not creative? What if I lose all of that? And this woman was like, okay, so imagine the fact that, like, you, because I've been writing since I was fucking 5 years old. Right. So like that's already there. Right. She's like, so imagine you. Now you just have all this artificial shit inside of you. You have literal poison inside of you. And you're still able to write pretty well. Now imagine you connected to the universe. Imagine the shit that will come out of that. Let's get that going. And she was absolutely right. I wrote my first song sober when I was in treatment. And you know what? It was fire. And it was a cycle of addiction put into a song. Yes, that part. Telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk. I 100%. I remember the first time reading this, and like my eyes lit up. I'm like, you're right. That's true. Are you not right? Let's keep reading. I don't know. By the time I had completed this course, I knew the law was not for me. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that one day would turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. It went into certain securities, then cheap and rather unpopular. I rightly imagined that they would someday have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anyway. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more reasons later on. Honestly, that's like, it's really us. Like, it's exactly what you just said. I'm watching everyone else fuck up. You're an idiot. I'm different. I'm gonna handle this differently. I got this. I know what I'm doing. I'm smart. You're dumb. I'm big. You're little. Okay. And there ain't nothing you can do about it. And also, with that being said, I am kind of just trying to, like, run through Bill's story, because, like, we're getting this whole backstory, and him and the fucking Wall Street, and then we're just gonna go into a war story for the next 7 pages. You know what I mean? Like, until we finally get to the solution, which is fine. And the reason why, like, I think that this story is still important, because, like, do y'all relate to really anything that he's saying about what's going on in his life?
No.
No. Do you relate so far to, like, how he thinks around drinking?
Oh,
Yes.
Exactly. Right? So we're all around and we're like, oh, yeah, we're different. I'm gonna fucking find all the differences between you and me, and I'm worse, or you're worse, and I'm not as bad. No, you stole things. Ew, you're a criminal. Shut up. Like, we're all the same fucking... Our experiences are unique, but our disease is not. Right? So... We gave up our positions, and off we roared on a motorcycle. The sidecar stuffed with a tent, blankets, a change of clothes, and 3 huge volumes of a financial reference service. Or just the idea of them in a motorcycle with a sidecar is like fucking cartoony and hilarious to me. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Perhaps they were right. I had some success at speculation, so we had a little money. But we once worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our small capital. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. At the end of it, my reports to Wall Street procured me a position there and the use of a large expense account. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year. For the next few years, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. My judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. The great boom of the late 20s was seething and swelling. Drink was taking an important and exhilarating part in my life. There was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. I made a host of fair weather friends. Y'all know what fair weather friends are?
They're only there for the good times.
They're only there for the fair weather. Not there for the stormy days. That's a fact. We hear it a lot, right? Like, yes, this is talking about Wall Street. But, like, I don't know. I read through this and I'm like, what's the fucking difference between this and gambling? Like, Suits? You know what I mean? Like, we don't call it an addiction. Because, like, my truth is, and this looks different for different people, but a lot of us who are addicts and alcoholics typically find ourselves to become a little overzealous with other things in life. Like, my history with self-harm looks very similar to my history with drugs and alcohol, right? Like, it is an addiction for me. It was my first love, if you will. And even in sobriety, it's been something that I've struggled with. It's just the truth, which is hard to say out loud, but it's just accurate. Same thing with like eating disorder behavior. You know what I mean? So it's no surprise to me that he is just very overzealous and very obsessive and very, I got this and I'm going to do it different and it's different for me when it comes to the stock market and money, right? Money is just as addictive as fucking any like shopping addicts. You know what I mean? Like, it's all giving us that fucking dopamine that we're looking for. And those fair weather friends, like so many of us, we get sober and then where those friends go. You know, I'm very, very lucky that a lot of the friends that I had in addiction and pre-addiction, like, they're not like me and they're the most supportive and I get to like love them and kind of have them around. But then there were other ones that I'm like, yeah, I'm sober, and they're like, oh, okay, well, let me know when you're in town and we'll get fucked up. I'm like, no, like, I'm sober. Like, well, let me know when that's over. I was like, oh. So I don't need you in my life. Got it. Because one of those slogans in the rooms is you have to change your people, places, and things. I disagree. It depends. It's about context, right? Some of my people are really good people, right? So it's like, oh, don't hang out with them because you used to smoke weed together and get drunk. They're normies. They don't want me to smoke weed. They don't want me to drink. They care enough. The ones that don't give a fuck, the normies that don't give a fuck and just like think that I'm making stupid choices and now I'm cured. Maybe. I don't need them in my life. And it's not even like I'm going to get fucked up thing. It's a respect thing. Like, once I start to get connected and I get well, why do I want that in my life? You know, my priorities change. The things that align with my world change. Right, so my drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. I can never pronounce this word. The remonstrances? Remonstrances? Help me.
Yeah,
The remonstrances. Wordsmith my ass. Of my friends terminated in a row and I became a lone wolf. There were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife helped at times by extreme drunkenness, kept me out of those scrapes. So now we're starting to watch him progress in his alcoholism. We're watching him progress from like just being hyper focused on this Wall Street gig to like actual alcoholism like taking over. And now he's getting like actual fucking consequences, right? In 1929, I contracted golf fever. It's another fucking thing. He's ripped. We went at once to the country. My wife to applaud while I started to overtake Walter Hagen, who was the golf champion between 1914 and 1929. Liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind Walter. I began to be jittery in the morning. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to carom around the exclusive course which had inspired such awe in me as a lad. I acquired the impeccable coat of tan one sees upon the well-to-do. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. Finding things that allow me to get loaded all the time was a big factor. Like, we were talking about it last week or the week before, like, or whatever it was. Like, if I can't get loaded, why would I go? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, why bother? It was 2 weeks ago, right? Like, there's no point. So he's fine. He's like, oh, I can get fucked up all the time doing this and look fancy. Okay, yeah. So he gets to drink all the time while he's in his little golf thing and he's getting the dopamine rushes. He thinks he's going to be the golf champion, even though he's like never done this. He says that he was coming up behind Walter Hagen. Do you really believe that? I don't believe it. I think he's full of shit. I think that Bill W. is making himself sound much better than he actually was.
I think he's highlighting his delusion.
I think so too. It's like, I'm doing a great job. I'm very tan. I look great. And I'm drunk all the time. This is fantastic. He's living his best life. So, abruptly, in October 1929, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. Why can't I speak? After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from a hotel bar to a brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market closed. The ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of tape which bore the inscription XYZ32. It had been 52 that morning. I was finished, and so were my friends. The papers reported men jumping to death from the towers of high finance. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. Oof. My friends had dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow was another day, as I drank the old fierce determination to win came back. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. Just like the idea, like with us, how this stuff like literally kills us. He's like, I'm not going to kill myself.
I'm going to kill myself slowly.
I'm going to do it slowly. Right? Still doesn't see it. Still does not see it that way. He doesn't think he has a phone. He's starting to see a little bit more like, this is becoming a thing in my life, right? Like, wow, I really like to get fucked up. But it's driving my genius. It's making me better. I'm going to, where they fail, I'm going to do well. And these people are the cowards, right? Next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left and thought I had better go to Canada. By the following spring, we were living in our accustomed style. I felt like Napoleon returning from Elba. No St. Helena for me, but drinking caught up with me again, and my generous friend had to let me go. This time, we stayed broke. I don't know about y'all, but history is not my gig. So, for the sake of context, Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of France between 1804 and 1814, was exiled to the Italian island of Elba in 1915. Bonaparte escaped from the island later the same year. That's it. That's the thing. So, St. Helena, British island off the west coast of Africa, Napoleon was imprisoned there after a brief reign as emperor in 1815, and he died there from cancer in 1821. So, yes, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm not going to die a slow death from a disease. Yeah. Ominous warnings we failed to heed. But drinking caught up with me again. And my generous friend had to let me go. This time we stayed broke. We're watching the consequences get worse, right? We're watching all these sufficient reasons to stop come and go, and he's still not able to stop. Now, we have progressed into full-blown alcoholic. In the beginning, he called himself a potential alcoholic. Now you're an alcoholic. Right? If you're in the place where, like, money is so important to you, and, like, your wife is so important to you, and you keep losing ways to earn money and protect her, is it because he doesn't love her? Is it because he doesn't give a shit? Is it because he doesn't care about money? Clearly not. Right? It's because now his mind is starting to become real sick. We went to live with my wife's parents. I found a job, and then lost it as the result of a brawl with a taxi driver. Mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years, or hardly draw a sober breath. My wife began to work in a department store, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. I became an unwelcome hanger-on at brokerage places. Liquor ceased to be a luxury. It became a necessity. And that's how we know he's an actual full-blown alcoholic. Underline that, highlight it, for bless you, if you haven't already, because that has always been something that hit me so hard. And that's something that people don't, like normies don't understand. And it's like part of the stigma of alcoholism and drug addiction, like the idea that we're doing this for fun, right? It's not fun anymore. It's not a luxury anymore. Part of my mental obsession tells me that it's fun. It tells me that it's still something that I want to do and I'm choosing to do, right? So when we start to talk about the whole idea of loss of power of choice and the insanity around this, that's where we buck back on that so hard, right? I've noticed that so much with myself, with a lot of people I've worked with. They're like, I fucking chose to do all of that. So we get it. You hate yourself. All right, you're in so much self-loathing. You can't even like wrap your head around the idea that maybe this was happening to you, right? I have to believe that like I'm in control and I am just a shitty person who chooses to hurt myself and others this way. And it's just not fucking true. Like, yes, I've done shitty things. No one's gonna take that away from any of us. Please go make amends and do inventory. Like, you're still responsible for your actions. And just like and we talked about it before, right? Just like someone with bipolar, in a manic episode, are you choosing to act a fucking fool? Right? Are you choosing to say the things that are coming out of your mouth? Is that same decisions? No, it's not. Right? And I still have to go back and own it. I don't get to look someone in the eye and go, oh, well, sorry, I was manic. Oh, sorry, I was drunk. Remember, you don't get to fucking do that. Right? And accountability and compassion have to live in the same place, and that includes for yourself. How are you going to give others compassion and empathy if you don't give it to yourself also? And vice versa, right? So I get to hold myself accountable and have empathy for the fact that it was an absolute necessity to me. The idea of not having something change the way I feel, just like I can't describe to someone who doesn't understand what that feels like to me, right? Sounds like fucking torture, right? It was not fun. It was something that was just necessary. Bathtub gin. Slang term for homemade liquor popular during Prohibition. 2 bottles a day, and often 3, got to be routine. Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s, and I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. This went on endlessly, and I began to waken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler full of gin followed by a half dozen bottles of beer would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation, and there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hope. You need that much alcohol to keep down breakfast. You are physically shaking violently, and you still believe you're in control of the situation. If that's not a fucking mental illness, I don't know what is. Like, that is the epitome of mental. Like, it's fine, I got this. Everything is still fine. No one's fine here. And that, those small, brief moments of sobriety renewing his wife's hope, right? Like, she doesn't know what the fuck's going on. No one knows what the fuck's going on. And it's like, and that's also what my mental obsession will tell me. But I was able to stop. I stopped. I was sober for 3 weeks. I'm an alcoholic, I'm fine. I've been doing so good for 37 days. I can drink. Guys, if you're counting your sobriety days, you're an alcoholic. Like, normal people don't fucking do that. Normal people, muggles, if you will. We're the magical ones. Clear on them. Right. Muggles do not say, I have 17 days sober. I can take Xanax. Like a normal person. They just don't. I haven't shot dope in 42 days. I can do it just once. That's us. We do that shit. We think that shit. That is abnormal. That is not, it is incorrect. And then, like, the people around us that can't make heads or tails of it, they get so excited when they see us, like, finally looking like the people that they know for a second. But then it goes from, like, excited to very cautious to completely skeptical to there's no more trust, right? And then we get mad at them when we're 42 days sober. I'm like, why don't you trust me? Okay, first of all, calm down. You shit 42 days sober and you decide you can drink again. So you decide. I use that term loosely. We don't fucking decide because we don't have power of choice, but our brain decides for us. You know what I'm saying? Gradually, things got worse, as they do. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. I don't know why that was funny. There's just like all this shit. And then they died. Our pets' heads are falling off. I'm sorry. I'm unwell. Then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at the low point of 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. So then I went on a prodigious bender, and that chance vanished. Just real quick. He's like, fucked. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. Smart. He actually knows what's going on now. Praise God. You understand that you have an allergy. I was through forever. Before then, I had written lots of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time, I meant business. And so I did. In the doctor's opinion, it says, right, they make a lot of, many resolutions, but never a decision, right? And I think that a lot of times we believe that we make a decision, but the decision is not to stay sober. The decision is to take the direction from the people who know how to stay sober. That's the decision, right? The decision now, we know, lives in step 3, right? To make a commitment to do the rest of the work. I cannot just decide, you know what, this time it's different. This time, you know what, I'm going to stay sober forever. Dude, and that's the thing about this time. Like, I'm very clear that I don't get to just make that choice. The only choice that I get to make is, am I going to do this or am I not? And then from there, like, the problem is either removed or I get to take it back, right? But yeah, I'm at business. So I did. Shortly afterward, I came home. I will never forget the first time reading Bill's story. Because this is literally the first time I was like, okay, in business, this is the part. This is where we invent the 12 steps. And I came home drunk. I'm like, okay. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone had pushed a drink my way, and I had taken it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder if such an appalling lack of perspective seemed near being just that. That part, like, it's heavy, right? Like, it's dark. It breaks my heart because I felt it so many times. I've told you before, I detoxed myself off of opiates, cold turkey, dozens of times because I wanted to stop so bad. And then just did it again. I don't even know how I got there. Where was my higher resolve? Am I crazy? Why am I doing this? You know? I must have been. You know? And it was fucking nuts. But we renew our resolve. I tried again. Some time passed and confidence began to be replaced by cocksure. That's a hilarious word. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe at a telephone. In no time I was beating on the bar asking myself how it happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time. But I might as well get good and drunk then, and I did. Oh, God, that part. Right? Well, fuck it, we're already here. Let's really just ride it till the wheels fall off. Might as well. And this is like what we're watching him go through is so important because, again, he's not sitting there. Because he would say, he's like, I don't even know what happened. I'm just getting drunk. I didn't sit there and think about the consequences and try to play the tape through and all that bullshit that fucking people in places tell us to do, right? Because that doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, he just drank. Someone pushed a drink, he drank it. There was no fucking thought. That's called a strange mental blank spot that we talk about later in the book, right? So we think about the obsession, we think about obsessing over getting loaded. If obsessing over getting loaded was the whole thing about the mental obsession, I wouldn't be scared. Right? I think a lot of us would be able to stay sober a lot easier because it's like, oh, you're thinking about getting fucked up. Go call your sponsor. Pick up that $1,000 phone and dial all the digits. But that's all that happens. I have no intention of getting loaded. I just do. And I don't know what happens. And that's the terrifying part. And that's why, like, I have to stay on top of this shit to make sure the obsession stays removed because it's lies I tell myself. It is obsessing, but not always. And it's the strange mental blank spots. So I'm getting hit from my brain in all different fucking areas. And I don't know what's wrong with me. Am I crazy? I must be. What else is the reason? The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle was not there. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. I hardly dared cross the street, lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with a dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. A morning paper told me the market had gone to hell again. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? No. Not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that. So 2 bottles and oblivion. Y'all ever been asked, and I want to be clear, this is not a 12-step thing, this is very much so like a therapy thing, but have any of y'all ever written like a goodbye letter to your addiction?
Mm-hmm.
I wrote it a little too soon, and of my own accord, I just thought it was a good idea, because I'm a writer. I like to write. So I'm going to write myself a little goodbye letter. And the first time I wrote it, it was a love note. And I was like, oh no. It scared me. The second time I wrote it, I don't know. It was a lot more powerful, but it was not a hate note, because this is my truth, right? I was grateful for what it had done for me until it stopped working, because I'm very sure that at points of my life, getting loaded stopped me from killing myself. But I wanted to kill myself because I couldn't stop getting loaded. You know what I mean? Like, it was just this weird fucking paradox. And like, I like to be open about that stuff, and because I think that we lose a lot of people when we don't level with them. It's like, it was always bad, and it's never good, and it's just not true, because then people are saying, well, I don't love that. And then we lose them. And it's like, no shit, you loved it. I'll never forget, I was teaching a step 1 class, right? And this girl raises her hand, she's like, but what if I like how heroin feels? And I was like, welcome to the fucking club, homie. Be addicted to it if you don't like it, right? I liked it. That's why I did it. But then it became a mental illness. And no matter how badly I needed or wanted to stop, I couldn't. That's the problem, right? So how do I live a life that is more joyous, and I get better feelings in my body, in my spirit, in my mind than I did when I was high? That seems impossible to someone like me. Drugs are the only way I could ever experience something like that. Alcohol is the only way I could experience something like that. Until I just do, and that's why this whole thing is a leap of faith, right? Because like, I cannot convince you that you're gonna feel like, I know you can attest to it, like the shit, like the spiritual like highs and like cool shit that you can experience in sobriety. I can't convince you of that. I can't explain that to you. So I need you to take a leap of faith and just fucking do the thing. And then the cool thing is you don't have to rely on faith the whole time, because now you're going to have your own experience. And now you get to lean on your own experience instead of believing mine. But first, you just have to do it. And that's the fucking hard part, right? That's the rub. But what is the alternative? And my brain lies to me about the alternative. I get a little bit of sobriety, and I forget. Should I kill myself? Not now. That's the reality, right? And it's so interesting, because we go back and look at what we just read earlier, where it's like, I see people jumping off of buildings. Bitches, I wouldn't do that. I'm going to go to the bar. And I was like, I think I should do it. I think I should jump from the building. Not because of the money. That didn't drive him. And that's the difference, right? It's like, it wasn't the market. It wasn't the money. All these things. It was super over. It wasn't golf that brought him to his fucking knees. Like, yes, he got obsessive about it. Yes, it was a little fucking crazy and delusional. But it's alcohol. And that's what differentiates us from other people, right? They're like, oh, well, I have an addictive personality. Like, cool, man. But did it bring you here? That's addiction. There's a difference between having like an addictive personality where you get a little fixated on shit and being one of us. You know what I mean? This is where it takes us. And the mental fog settled down. Jane would fix that. I want to die because I can't stop getting loaded. I need to get loaded because I want to die.
Mm-hmm.
That is fucking misery. That is step one. You know? So surely now he's gonna get sober, right? Y'all have anything on that? I know I'm just on the whole fucking thing.
No, that's great. Keep going. You're good.
Yes, ma'am. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this agony 2 more years. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and madness were on me. Again, I swayed dizzily before an open window where the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for a weakling. There were flights from city to country and back, as my wife and I sought escape. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. Sometimes I managed to drag my mattress to a lower level lest I suddenly leap. A doctor came with a heavy sedative. Next day found me drinking with both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my sanity. So did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking, and I was 40 pounds underweight. And this is where, like, when it says in the book, right, like, please find a good doctor. There are going to be other things that we can't help you with. And so anytime I hear someone in a 12-step fellowship tell someone that they're not sober because they're on a prescribed medication, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm like, oh, well, if you need, Zoloft, you're not working the program. It's just not true. However, when I tell a doctor I'm in recovery and I can't take any narcotics, they're like, well, how about you then? What if I just give you like a half a Xanax? And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, you're not going to fix my alcoholism with a fucking narcotic. It's not, you're not going to fix my alcoholism with any med. Let's get clear on that. It's going to help balance my brain once I'm sober, right? But you're going to give me shit I'm going to get more fucked up on? And think that's going to, come on.
Yeah, I'm just now realizing that my doctor stopped.
Yeah.
He's on Cloudbed for like 5 years. I said I was sober during that whole time too.
Yeah.
Oh. Yes.
I've seen it so much. And people suffer from it. So, and that's why I get really amped up about it. I try not to like talk about like medications and stuff that's like super controversial on this, but also I've watched it happen so many times. People go back to their Adderall, people go back to their benzodiazepines, and I can't make this clear enough, right? Like, so if I have an allergy, I have an abnormal reaction to substances, right? Do you think that a pen and a pad writing a prescription is going to take away the allergy? No. That doesn't make sense, right? Like, if the doctor said, well, she can drink 3 beers a day, is that going to fucking work? No. It doesn't fucking work that way. And I was talking to my best friend about it the other day, and I was just like, listen, it's hard for me because, like, I have a panic disorder, right? I don't take benzos. There are non-narcotic things that work. In early sobriety, it's hard to believe that they work because the truth is not only am I dealing with anxiety, I'm dealing with addiction. So when I take something for my anxiety, my addiction wants to feel high. So when I don't feel high, I feel more anxious, right? But it's not actual anxiety, it's addiction. So now, and I'm like, well, I can't meditate because my brain doesn't shut off. And it's like, no shit, that's why you meditate, because your brain doesn't. Do you do yoga because you're flexible? No, you become flexible because you do yoga. Do you go to the gym because you're fucking buff? No, Jerry can tell you, right? You go and you get buff and go to the gym. You have to actually do the thing. You have to do the meditation for your brain to fucking calm down, right? Like, that's how this works. It's not chicken or the egg shit. It's very easy to explain. So no, I don't get to do those things when we're watching it in real time, listening to Bill tell this fucking story. And so many of us, like, we're sitting like, fuck, damn it, that's me. I did that shit. And just like we talked about earlier, we're talking about some fucking white dude in the 20s, in the 30s, and it's like, I can't relate to anything he's saying. But I relate to everything he's saying about his alcoholism. Literally. You take the word alcohol and put in any other drug and that's me. And honestly, it took me a while to figure out that, like, when I was in my step one group and figuring out my step one truth, I really didn't think I was an alcoholic until later. When I was like, oh, fuck, I drink to get drunk. You know what I mean? Like, I drink alcoholically. My mental, like, my thing is, like, I want to do drugs, and if there's just alcohol, I'm good. That's what I'm doing. You know what I mean? It's not one or the other. It never has been. Yeah. So this fucking guy, he's 40 pounds underweight. He's just losing it. He's becoming a mess. He is not okay. We're watching him progress into a place that a lot of us progressed into before we got sober, right? The pictures of me in detox are wild. My brother-in-law is a physician, and through his kindness and that of my mother, I was placed in a nationally known hospital for the mental and physical rehabilitation of alcoholics. Under the so-called belladonna treatment, my brain cleared. Hydrotherapy and mild exercise helped much. But best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had become seriously ill, bodily and mentally. So, the hospital is the Charles B. Towns Hospital in New York, New York. A represent. The belladonna treatment, it refers to the sedative and antispasmodic drug belladonna, formerly used to relieve some of the effects of alcohol withdrawal. What I've always been told is that it's like, it makes you really sick, and it's just like a really, really fucking bad time. Same thing with hydrotherapy. I've always been told that you're basically getting really hot, really cold, really hot, really cold, and it's a really fucking gnarly time. So I'm grateful to be a little drunk and dope fiend in today's world and not back then, right? And he's like, wait, I had a fine time. And then this doctor, who's the doctor? Who's the doctor? Oh, who's? What? Sorry. I'll give you a hint. We just read his letter.
Dr. Silver.
He's talking about Bill, and now Bill's talking Silkworth. Yeah, man. So we're gonna read one more paragraph and then we'll stop. It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics, the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Understanding myself now, I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months, the goose hung high. I went to town regularly and even made a little money. Surely this was the answer. Self-knowledge. But it was not, for the frightful day came when I drank once more. Oh, that was more than the paragraph, but that was important. This is, again, I was like, this is where we get sober. This is it. He met Silkworth. Duh. Like, we're good now. Right? So this is the part where when people say the only step you have to get 100% is step 1. What happens with that is, like, I agree to an extent, right? I'm not going to do any of it perfectly. It's just the truth. But I have to have a real step 1 experience. I have to understand what is happening. Not be caught, and this is the thing, context matters. Context is important. The knowledge of step 1 will never, ever, ever, ever keep me sober, right? But the hope is that if I understand what alcoholism and addiction is, and I understand what's going to happen, then I will be willing to do anything that is asked of me to stay sober for good and for keeps. That is the hope. That is why we drill step 1 so fucking hard, right? That's why anytime someone says, I chose to drink, I'm like, you didn't choose to drink. Because if you're saying that you chose to drink, you're also telling me that you're going to choose to just stay sober. How well has that fucking worked out for you? If you can't choose to stay sober, then you're not choosing to drink. That doesn't make sense. Right? Logically, it doesn't make sense. But this is where we get step 1. Silkworth gave us step 1. And then step 2 through 12 is the solution. Self-knowledge will never do it. I don't want to hold y'all any longer. Thank you so much for being here. Love you so much. Deuces.